Hello and welcome to Culture Club. My name is Rachel Strutt. I work at the Somerville Arts Council. And for today's episode, we are going to explore urban agriculture. Now, you might think in a city as densely populated as Somerville, there's not a lot of room for agriculture, but you would be wrong. And we set out to prove that today. Urban agriculture in the city is getting more and more popular. And one reason for that is last year in 2012, the city created an urban agriculture ordinance, the first of its kind in the state. And it lays down rules for raising chickens or starting a beehive. And it is really to encourage people in Somerville to produce their own food. And to be locavores, people who eat food that is produced locally. Now, in the spring, I hope we'll do a show on urban gardening, but today we're going to explore other types of urban food production. We'll be visiting a beekeeper and a cooperative of folks who raise chickens. So we'll start things off down in West Somerville, where Vera will be speaking with Sam Christie of the League of Urban Canners, or LURC.
Hi, so here we are on L Street with Sam Christie, founder of LURC, the League of Urban Canning, and he's going to tell us all about it. So can you tell us more about LURC, how it started?
Yeah, so LURC started because I guess the story is my wife began bringing home bags of fruit that she would collect. She's a very social person, and she'd be talking to people, and they'd say, "Here, take some of my grapes, or take some of my plums." And I, began to think that maybe there's more to this than just the things I was seeing. So we began looking at it. And I actually, what was interesting, I didn't really notice how much fruit there was. I began to notice there's an apple tree down the street, which I'd never really even seen before. I've lived here for 20 years, and it was the first time I ever saw it. And so I saw the apple tree, and I thought, okay, we should harvest this, and there's more. And it really just grew from there to harvesting last year 4,000 pounds of fruit.
So do people have membership? How does it work, basically, to find people around who are interested in participating in it?
So it began with about a dozen people in the spring of 2012, and we were just sort of people that I knew, and we thought we started to harvest some. At that point, we thought, okay, maybe we'll harvest some, grapes and some apples, and we'll see how it goes. And that was the beginning of the year, and then we put some notices on listservs and some flyers around. And by the middle of the year, we had 50 people who were involved, and we, as I say, at the end of the year, we'd harvested 4,000 pounds. So it just really grew quickly.
So what do you mostly harvest, and what do you do with it?
Yeah, so this is interesting. What I think is interesting, what actually grows in the city. And I really, as I said, I had no idea. Really, if you asked me 3 years ago, I would have said maybe apples. I've probably seen a pear around. But actually mulberries you probably know. Grapes, apricots grow here, plums, cherries, peaches. Peaches is funny. So I was just talking to someone the other day who would harvest some peaches here. And she said, I had a peach the other day on a street up in Somerville. It was the best peach I'd ever tasted in my life. And I said, wow, that's really cool. And she goes, yeah, and I'm from Georgia, and I know peaches. So I was really impressed with that. So there's just all kinds of fruits. Even the quince, persimmon, pears, plums, the usual stuff. But it's pretty impressive what grows around here.
So what do you make out of them?
So we mostly make jam. It depends on the fruit. With pears, for example, we'll actually just can them whole. Peaches will make, jam or can those. Mulberries, you make jam. Some people will dry fruit. They make dried leather. They make cider. We make vinegar. We make hard cider. Just all kinds of things.
And how do you distribute it between the people who harvested and canned and the owners of the fruit trees?
Right. So the informal deal we have is that the owners get 10% of whatever we make. And then people who harvest get 20%. And then people who can get 70%. Canning's a lot more work than everything else. So that's why it works out that way.
And how do you have, do you have many different ages or communities are gathered around this project?
Yeah. So I would say it's mostly people in late 20s, early 30s, sort of the core, but it really ranges. We have young people, kids involved, and much older people involved as well. Some of the owners we meet are older, and a lot of reason they're asking us to come harvest is because they can't harvest their fruit anymore. In fact, there's one woman whose peaches we harvest, and she's 96 years old. And that's amazing, but she lived in her house for 94 years. She was moved there when she was 2. So she's a really great character. And so we meet a lot of really fun people around the city when we do this work.
So here we're in the basement of Sam's house with those amazing finished products, those really colorful and tasty jars, can jars. So can you tell me more about the canning process?
Yeah, so most of the fruit is we gather it, wash it, and then you typically most of the camps with the jams you'll boil the fruit, and say with a sauce like a cherry sauce or applesauce or crabapple sauce, you run it through a food mill to remove the seeds and skin, and then make the sauce. With something like pears, you'll just actually quarter them and can them in a syrup. So those are the basic kinds of things that we do here. Yeah.
So, what are the most exotic jams or your favorite ones?
So I really like this is Cornelian cherry jam. So it's the fruit of a dogwood tree, and the fruit is actually quite small, and the seeds are actually quite big. So each fruit has very little fruit on it. So it takes a lot of Cornelian cherries to make jam, but the jam is really really good. And also mulberries, I think they're sort of an underappreciated fruit. If you have mulberries in your yard, you're used to just falling on your yard and making a complete mess. We can make amazing jam out of it. That's a really neat fruit that is actually a native tree, the mulberry tree.
Can you sell them or do you use them more to trade with friends?
Yeah, so we can't sell it. All of the fruit is there's not made in a certified kitchen. Just made. It's more of it's a club, so it's all part of the co-op, and so we use it for that. And we also do collect. So some of the jam that we collect from the harvest, we take a small percentage that we use as a way to trade for different things we need. The trailer that I use is borrowed for harvesting, so I give the person who owns the trailer some jam, and someone who makes T-shirts for us or they're listening for us, we'll trade them. We'll use jam as a sort of means of commerce.
That's a pretty neat experience of trading. And you were telling me that in the first part of the process, when you get the fruit from the trees, you prune the trees as well. You take care of them.
Yeah, so this year we just started doing that. So this last in the winter was when we do the pruning, and this year, this winter we pruned probably maybe a dozen trees. And really the idea is to improve the fruit production of the tree. So really seeing this more, not just as like what is available we're going to get, but really trying to help improve the fruit production in the city and really see the city as a real farm that we can really take care of.
So what are your plans for Lurk for next winter and spring?
I guess just doing more pruning, organizing. That's always a big thing. Really trying to get more and more of an organization going so that it's easier for people to get out to harvest and find things. And really just making sure that people in the city know what we're doing. And we've got to get interest from other people. Like the other day I got emails from JP with fruit trees, Malden, and Waltham. And so I'm trying to find people out there who can also do the same things we're doing out there. Say, hey, there's some trees out there that need to be harvested. So the word's getting around, it seems to be.
Well, good luck with it. And thanks so much for letting us in your basement and your house.
Great. Thank you.
Now we're going to head down to East Somerville and chat with Sam Musher, who is also a member of the League of Urban Canners, or LURC. So I am here in East Somerville with Sam Musher. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Thanks for having me coming over, I guess.
Now, you are a pretty serious canner, and you're also involved with Sam Christie at LURC. Can you tell me about how you work with them?
So I just got involved this year. And I'm a teacher, so I have the summer off. So I had lots of time to go to harvests and help can a bunch of stuff. I just think it's such an amazing organization to, I feel like I'm drowning in free fruit at this point, and it would be great to have more people get involved.
Yeah, it sounds like a great organization, and I imagine the relationships you make with the people whose the trees you harvest is pretty significant as well.
It really can be, yeah. I mean, it's a wide range of different kinds of owners whose trees we're harvesting. Sometimes, they love the tree and they're just completely overwhelmed by it, and so this is a great chance to step in and sort of have a community barn raising kind of experience. And sometimes it's, they don't even know it's edible. Like mulberries, a lot of times people don't even know that it's something you can eat. So then it's an education process. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, sometimes people think mulberries are just a mess and nothing more.
Exactly.
So tell us about what you're making and where did this come from?
So this came from a tree in Union Square, a Lurk tree. And it was two different kinds of pears actually that were grafted together on one tree, which was sort of cool. So this was part of the harvest that we did a couple weeks ago, and pears actually ripen best if you pick them a little unripe, and then they ripen in a bag. So I'm just doing the canning now.
And is this a sauce?
Yeah, it's sort of a sauce. sometimes I just kind of do whatever happens and see where it goes. The most important thing with canning is just that you have a good acid level. So I've added some lemon juice and cider vinegar to balance out the acid, just to make sure that you're not at risk of botulism.
Always a good thing.
Yes.
Well, it smells delicious. Now, you, it sounds like, are a true locavore, or closer to a locavore than a lot of people. That word is tossed around a lot. Can you tell us approximately how much stuff you can and how far that stretches into the winter?
Yeah, it's a good question. I keep really careful track of everything that I can and freeze and dehydrate and whatever I store. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure I can tell you, but it's a lot. And it ends up being more than I need. I mean, I give a lot away as well. And particularly this year, since I've been involved with Lurk, I think my canning production has like doubled this year. It's just so much more food than I'm used to having. But it lasts me all through the winter with the understanding that that's just me, and I eat out and I eat at work. And so this is dinners and weekends. But
So you don't buy produce during the winter?
I do not buy produce during the winter. No, this is what I eat.
That's
No, I was just going to say it started as just sort of a project and experiment to see if I could do it. And the first year it was a lot of canned tomatoes and potatoes, and I've gotten better at it. And
so show us some of the more exotic stuff you're making now.
all right, so this is salsa verde. This is from Parker Farm Tomatillos from Lunenburg, Mass. And so this is a good kind of thing to have a lot of, because you can make like enchiladas out of your root vegetables, and then you pour this over it and suddenly it has flavor. So that and pesto and that sort of thing is what like spices up your boring root meals in the winter.
Absolutely. And now what about these guys?
Okay, so these are homemade maraschino cherries, and this is not even canned because they're floating in alcohol, so they don't need to be. So it's really just cherries in maraschino liqueur, and I am not 100% sure, but I think these were probably Lurk cherries.
Okay. And I see some tomato sauce. And what is this?
Yep, so this is a peach salsa. So peaches and tomatoes and corn and jalapenos. This was last year's salsa that I still haven't gone through, so you can see I can more than I need usually.
Do you ever fall in love with certain projects more than others, and do you hoard them and save them for a couple months down the line?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think of the whole process as like a present to my future self, you know?
I love that.
Thanks. Yeah. It's a fun way to think about it. It's like you're looking forward into the future and planning for this sort of cycle of the year. And I really like that aspect of it.
What will I be craving in February?
Right. and it's a promise that, you know, you're still going to be around and eating good things and sharing those things with your friends and all of that in 6 months when it's cold outside. That's a good reminder.
And can you quickly break down the process for us? And I'm sure it varies depending on what you're making.
So really the process is hot food goes in hot jars. Hot jars sit in boiling water for some period of time. That's like the basic level, simple process. So I've got the pear stuff cooking over here. The jars are sitting in the pot of water. When I'm ready, I'll take the hot jar out, fill it up with pear stuff, put a lid on it. So the lids come in these two-part things. So this goes on top and then screws onto the jar. And once the jar is filled and sealed, put it in the boiling water, and depending on what kind of food it is, it needs to cook for some different period of time. So this will be 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then you take it out and it's sealed. And that's been enough time to kill the bacteria that was in there and to remove the air.
And then it lasts forever?
Forever, yeah.
Interesting. Well, Sam, thank you so much for talking with us and breaking down the canning process.
You're welcome. Thank you.
now we are going to meet with a cooperative of chicken raisers. Vera will be chatting with them in central Somerville.
Hi there, I'm Vera. You've seen me before on Culture Club. I specially traveled from Paris to do this interview with John and Kevin.
Hello.
And Connie.
Hello.
And here we are at their amazing chicken co-op, and they're going to tell us more about it. So how did it all start?
So, well, amongst us, I raised chickens before in upstate New York a few years ago. And then, I just kept mentioning it to you guys, and Kevin kept saying, I have no interest in doing this. This is never going to happen. And then I don't know what happened. He had an epiphany, and eventually we agreed to do it. So, but when I was saying to you before, the problem with when I did it before, my ex-wife and I just raised them, the two of us. And so you always have to be home every night to close them up, and you always have to be there in the morning to let them out. So we had this idea that if we did it as a co-op, we could do it in shifts and have a Google Calendar. And if one or two people from the co-op went away, there'd always be somebody to do it. And we basically had a conversation with some friends who hang out at the Highland Kitchen. It's my plug for the Highland Kitchen. And we thought we had 6 people amongst us who were interested in doing it, and who all lived really within a 10-minute walk of here. So it just worked out from there.
I mean, I thought part of it was we have a big yard here, and we have a dog and a cat. And so I was thinking about maybe we get another dog. And there's a chicken coop on the bike path. And so then I saw them, and then, John had mentioned it like many times. And then at the bar I said, well, maybe I'll get chickens. And John was like, yes. And so then it took us a while to get it organized, but we ordered this chicken coop online. And within the matter of 2-3 weeks, we got it set up. John got the chickens, and we were off to the races. But it was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing, building on knowing that John had the knowledge of how to do it.
But I think a lot of people are deterred from doing it because they think it's so much more, And the first time I did it, it's just so foreign to the way most of us live now that I felt like, I can't do this. But I think people are always shocked, and some of the members of the co-op were, at really how easy it is once you start doing it. I mean, you need a shelter, and they really are kind of self-regulating. I mean, their lives are ruled by the sun. When it's bright, they want to be outside. As it gets darker, and if they're free-ranging around the yard, as the sun goes down, they'll start circling closer and closer to the coop. And then by the time the sun's out, they generally go in the coop, and you shut the door. So they really kind of take care of themselves. You pick up eggs, you put food and water out, you close the door, you open the door. I think people are often surprised at just how easy it is to do it. So,
Do you need any kind of authorization here in Somerville, or?
I hope not. I don't think so. I've talked. I once talked to the mayor and some of his people at Soundbites about our chickens. And he was like, because I'd read that he had signed on to this thing that he was pro-urban agriculture. And he was thrilled. And he said, would you mind if sometime my people came by and took some pictures of the coop and stuff? And I was like, good. And so I don't think so. I mean, I remember doing some research at the time, and it wasn't. I think no, I don't know. I was under the impression, or someone had told me that it's illegal in Cambridge right now. But then I met somebody who was raising chickens near Cambridgeport who told me that it's not illegal in Cambridge. And in fact, now there's the people raising chickens off the bike path near Davis Square. There's a store that's basically selling equipment for people doing relish, urban agriculture. And on every Tuesday, they have a chicken raisers social, like cocktails, and you trade information about raising chickens, and you can chip in and buy feed. So there's plenty of people around here doing it. So I don't think so. As far as I know, the mayor's office is encouraging it.
I think there's just no rules. And I think they want to encourage the sort of hipster thing that was talked about in the Boston Globe, the Portlandia thing. They actually want people to do the urban farming and get things going. And actually, one of the best parts of it is we have kids in the neighborhood who love to come in and see the chickens. And the neighbors are totally interested. So it builds this sort of communal vibe. People will have the neighbors' kids just sort of wander in and want to touch the chickens. I mean, they're kind of freaked out to begin with, but I think it's good for them. So they get to know chickens aren't so scary. They get to know the animals and the eggs and how the system works. So it's been great for the neighborhood. Everybody knows about the chickens. People across the yard. This guy was raised in Eastern Europe, and he was raised around chickens. So he finds the noise comforting. So it's been great for the neighborhood. They're pets, and they're also producers. We put them to work.
So how many eggs do you get?
At peak, I think we were getting between 30 and 35 a week. They kind of slowed down, but in the spring is their peak time, and we were getting 4 or 5 a day. We literally were giving them away. I mean, people in the co-op were eating them, but we have a little system where we have a little fridge down in the basement, and we had 36 eggs, and we literally had to give them away.
Yeah, these breeds, when they're healthy, I mean, they'll lay on average each chicken about 300 eggs a year. So it's a lot. We have 6 chickens. It's a lot of eggs. Most of the joy for me comes from just sort of being involved in this way of life that most people aren't anymore, and being involved in where your food comes from. But it's just kind of fun to do, to care for them, to feed, water them, let them out, let them in, for the same reasons people have pets and stuff. It is also nice that you're eating from them, but it feels like a really nice relationship with the animals, and you also have a relationship with where your food comes from, so it's nice. The orange guys are Americanas, and farmers call them Easter eggers because they lay things they could be anywhere from blue to pink. We don't really have a pink one here, but we have some of their blue eggs.
This one's pinkish.
Yeah, it's pinkish. And you see that Lorelei lays these really tiny, she's a very tiny chicken, and she lays really tiny eggs. I think the browns are from the white orbs, the two white birds. So it's nice. They're all different sizes. I mean, they're all pretty big except for Lorelei's eggs. And they do taste way better. Like, people always ask that. They don't ask it once you give them to them. I mean, the yolks are like this really kind of dark, rich orange, especially if you cook them in any kind of way where the yolk stays wet. So if you soft boil them or do them over easy, the yolk is like so rich tasting and dark, and they're really fabulous. So, yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Connie has a final speech. Please free us. Free us. Come get us. We're trapped.
And next up, we are going to chat with Mike Graney, who is a local beekeeper. So I am here with Mike Graney, a local beekeeper. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
So can you tell me a little bit about the hive here at Fringe? And we should mention we're at Fringe, which is just outside of Union Square.
Well, it's a first-year colony, so it was started in May. The bees get shipped up here from Georgia, and the queen gets released. The queen starts laying eggs, the population starts growing, and if conditions are good, you can get honey from it.
And about how long does that process take?
Well, when there's flowers out, the bees are out working the flowers. The challenge is to have enough bees working the flowers when the flowers are blooming.
And do you have a sense of what sort of flowers here in Somerville?
It's all wildflowers. We're standing behind honeysuckle, which is flowering right now. The linden bloom is big in the city because the city trees lindens were planted along sidewalks like crazy when they did those plantings. All sorts of different wildflowers, though.
And so does your honey have a distinctive Somerville taste, could you say?
Well, honey from New England definitely tastes different from other places because it's always a mix of different flowers. Every bit of honey is unique to itself. It's always changing and always different.
And beyond producing delicious honey, can you talk about the role that bees play?
Well, I mean, pollinating crops is the biggest thing that honeybees do. Pollen from vegetables and certain fruits is very heavy and sticky and actually needs mechanical insects to cross-pollinate the flowers. It's not pollinated by the wind. So either people will go up there and pollinate the flowers one by one, which is very impractical, or you can use a beehive.
And is it important to have more and more urban beekeepers? Are folks like you playing an important role in urban agriculture and food production?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I like that people learn where their food comes from. I love turning kids onto where their food comes from. People think that food just comes from the store, and really, food comes from the ground.
And how many beekeepers are in Somerville or the Boston area, and is it a growing movement?
It's a lot more than anybody thinks. I don't really know any hard numbers. I just know that when I put on workshops, I get dozens of people showing up that all seem to have hives. So it's definitely growing.
And how involved is it to start a hive in terms of logistics and money and filling out paperwork with the city?
Well, they do cost a few $100s to get the basic tools and the live bees and the structure of the hive. But the cities and towns are still catching up about how to the logistics on how to legally form the hives themselves. But I like to turn people onto it because it doesn't require any land. Unlike gardening, where you need actually a plot of dirt and water, bees go out and find their own nectar source and bring it back home.
Interesting. And in terms of looking after the bees, what does that entail?
Springtime's the busy time, and fall time is the other busy time. Springtime, they do require more attention because the queen needs more attention. It's critical to make sure that your queen is healthy. I also give them sugar water in the springtime to jumpstart their production. They don't have enough foragers to go out and work the flowers yet. And then in the fall, I always make sure that they have enough space on the hive so that the supers and the frames don't get filled with honey prematurely.
Got it. Now, you said you also have a hive in Winter Hill. What do your neighbors think of that?
My neighbors actually think it's cool. I didn't ask permission. I was hoping that they would be okay with it. Most of them don't even notice it, but the ones that do notice it think it's really neat.
Especially if you give them some occasional honey, I'm guessing.
You've got to grease the wheels.
And now I know there's a big problem with the health of bees and bees dying out nationally and globally. Is that a problem in this area?
Yes, it's been a problem. And in fact, it really only hit the news when it affected the really large producers. It's been affecting small producers for a long, long time. Last year, though, was especially bad for my operation.
Oh, sorry to hear that. And how dangerous is it? Have you ever had any run-ins, issues?
I'm more worried about other people. Getting started, it does take a little bit of time to become comfortable with them. Most newbies are very nervous around them. But once you sort of learn to relax around them, and also the key, and what I try to teach people, is how to read their mood so that you're working them at the right time of day and on the right conditions so that when they're busy working, they really don't even notice that you're there.
So they're like people in a way.
They're a lot like people.
Interesting. Well, you said that a day that's not too humid, not too hot is a good day to approach the bees. So I think we lucked out in that regard.
A bright sunny day when there's a lot of flowers blooming, they don't even care about you.
Now, where can people buy your honey?
My honey is only available at a few spots. The one that I recommend is Follow the Honey shop in Harvard Square.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Glad you came out.